It's going to be your same tried and true Super Cyber Friday core experience. So we're going to get started with our classic cold open. So David Cross, give me some good advice on starting out your CISO journey.
Well, Rich, as you say, you need to wear a sports coat and a tie, otherwise you're not going to get anywhere. So I'm going to say it right up front, everybody. But in all seriousness, right, you've got to be building a network. If you're not building a network and investing in it long term, you're never going to get there.
All right, dress for success and network. I like that starting. So Montez, I'm gonna shoes on the other foot here. I need some bad advice on starting out your CISO journey.
Yeah, I know. I'm certainly on the Barney Stinson suiting up. I love that, David. And and so bad advice is to stay isolated and siloed. Don't talk to anyone ever.
Okay, so don't network. Just keep your head down in the cybersecurity trenches. All right. Well, David Cross, you have your work cut out for you. Give me some worse advice on starting your CISO journey.
The worst advice is to only be on social media, with a pseudonym. I think that's probably the best I could give for that one.
Ooh, okay. Well, with that being said, let's get the show started.
Get ready. It's Super Cyber Friday.
Yes, indeed. Welcome to Super Cyber Friday. Today's topic is going to be hacking what it takes to become a CISO. If the cold open didn't give it away, if the invitation to join the show also didn't give it away, there was a lot of spoilers, I'm not going to lie, but that is indeed the topic. We're going to be spending an hour thinking of critical thinking about the skills you need to move up to that top cyber leadership role. And that includes, hey, let's look at the wardrobe, folks. Let's be real here. We have some fantastic speakers that can speak to this. We have Montez Fitzpatrick, CISO over at Navis, and David Cross, CISO at Atlassian. I am thrilled to have both of you on the show today. It's going to be a fun time. So here's kind of how you can get involved if you are new to the Super Cyber Friday experience. I know we had a lot of registrations for this, a lot of interest in this topic. First up, our chat room. I'm already seeing some familiar faces in here. Andrew Aiken, Dutch. I see Sean, one of our who was one of our cybersecurity headlines producers and a CISO in his own right now. So lots of great people in there. So get in there. Submit some questions in there as well. You can either do it in the separate question pane, or we can just move those over into the questions there. You can also submit a bad idea, your worst skill to put on your prospective CISO resume. Okay, what am I not going to endorse on LinkedIn if you put on there? And then for your good idea, how to build out your CISO skill set, use the hashtags bad idea and 10P respectively, so we make sure we see it. Like I said, submit some questions, and we will try and get all of those on board as well. Here is our quick schedule for today. Some bad ideas. We're going to be playing some games today, having some fun, and it will all be good. Also, make sure you are joining us for next week when we have our Hacking the Internal Politics of Cybersecurity. We are going to, we have a little button there that you can register for that, and it's going to be a good time. By the way, I'm Rich Straffolino. I don't know if you've ever seen me on the show. Usually David Spark is hosting this. I'm one of the producers here at the CISO series. David will be back for next week. So if you're jonesing for David, and let's face it, who wouldn't be, you can also get there as well. And remember, we're going to have a meetup right after this. We're going to have breakout rooms. We're not moving to another platform. We're going to be doing that. So it will be a really good time. So gentlemen, let's just get this conversation started. I'm for CISO Series podcast. I'm researching stories all the time. I'm on the cybersecurity subreddit, and the thing that you see here, that conversation, it's very interesting. That group of people, a lot of people bemoaning their CISO. Oh, my CISO, doesn't have the technical chops they need to really do this job here. So I guess the biggest misconception technical professionals have about what a CISO role requires day to day? Because it seems like a lot of people think if you don't have these very on the metal skills, so to speak, that you really can't get the job done. So I'm curious, what do you guys think? Montez, let's start with you.
So certainly I still believe, wholly there that, the CISO, discipline, as the leader of cybersecurity is still a fairly technical role. And honestly, I was going to go a different direction with this question, and just a lot of the quid pro quo that the this for that you have to have, and might I add that there is a lot of, when you get up at this level, about how much everyone doesn't know, and that's inclusive. Everyone doesn't know about what's actually going on around, and so yeah, that's just that's a mind boggling.
I mean, David, does that kind of reflect your experience with this, with kind of technical question?
Well, I'd like to add a couple points. Certainly, one thing is I know it's very controversial, but an element is like you got to stay up to date. You have to be technical and things like that. Like for example, let's say you're a CISO today. You can say that no, I don't need to know about AI. I don't need to know anything about that. I can stay as a CISO. There's no way. I'm gonna say a bad word, right? There's no way. You got to stay up to date and technical with that, otherwise that's critical now. But an element is, I think, for many companies is first it depends on the vertical of the company. Some companies, like tech companies and financial services, can be much more technical. There's others maybe a little bit different. Manufacturing, healthcare, those type of things. It also depends on the maturity of the company. Every company may be in a different stage and may need something a little bit different. So I think those are some of the factors that are important to understand.
Yeah, and I think that gives a little that strikes the right balance, right? Yeah, you can't be completely blithe to everything that's going on, especially as LLM tech and AI tech and stuff like. I mean, that's like the perfect example, right? If you're not keeping up on that, good luck. I kind of want to maybe take a step back, just personally for you. When did you know? I'm assuming for both of you, the CISO series didn't exist when you started your cybersecurity journey, but maybe the CISO role even wasn't defined or wasn't as common as it is today. Like like David, when did you know, like, hey, I'm going for CISO? Like, what was that decision, or what was that realization like?
Well, in all honesty, I was asked to become a CISO, right? And so it was an ask. I wasn't seeking it out. And I know many people will say that I'm lying about this, but I never asked for a promotion. I never asked for a job change. I never asked to move companies. They asked and reached out to me. And that goes back to my point about the network. If you don't have a network, who's going to reach out to you to offer you a CISO role or a new opportunity, right? So that's very, very important. So for myself, it was more of an opportunity that appeared, and I when you see it, you grab it and go for it.
Montez, what about for you?
Well, for me, I actually do remember, um, and so got into information security. I think right at the beginning, maybe certainly not as early as Steve Katz did, certainly right, but I remember I was a network security engineer and was looking at moving up, and I think my boss at the time, shout out Chris there, and I think he asked me, what is it that you want to do, and I said, I'm on my way to being a CISO, and as a network security engineer. And so that's one of those things, and I believe firmly that you have to have goals, and you have to be able to speak them out into the sort of the universe, not to get all kind of woo woo about it, but you need to speak it out into the universe, and then certainly there people, if you're well liked, and let's be honest, I'm well liked, right? People love me, and so yeah, you have as many people helping you as you can. So
Jan in our chat has a fantastic bad idea. Getting the bad ideas started here. I gotta highlight this. Legally change your name to CISO at Disney. Jan, I apologize if one way or the other. Let's not give the threat actors like all the great ideas here. Like there's someone that's going to break some sort of form, like someone's not sanitizing their inputs on their form, and something's just going to completely break here. But yeah, keep the bad ideas coming, folks. I love seeing those. I remember seeing a couple light up here, so that is good here. Let's get into maybe that transition, right, from being a network security engineer or something along those lines, and kind of moving up here. A lot of talented cybersecurity professionals struggle, right, when they enter into that leadership role. I guess, when do you know when your expertise or I guess, how do you translate that expertise and then pivot that into leadership? Because those are two totally different things, right? Like expertise, I saw Jarek Beeson had a great piece about this. Expertise can often feel like you have to win every conversation, where leadership so much is about persuasion and that kind of stuff. So I'm curious, what do you, either one of you kind of jump in on that?
Yeah, I'll jump in one thing here right to start, right? And again, it's a little controversial, but it's kind of like the classic things like when does a manager become a leader, or how does an IC become a manager? And one thing you can say, well, go get your MBA, right? And magic happens, right? No, MBA is one of those paths to kind of help you getting there, but it doesn't make you a leader. It doesn't make you a manager. At the same time, I think for a CISO or a security leader, right, is that how do you build up the experience and knowledge and education to help you there? Because arguably, some people say, oh, you don't need a degree, you don't need MBA. No, of course you don't. But when you get to large organizations, let's say the Fortune 500, like, how are you going to understand, $100 million budgets in ethics and laws and contracts? Yeah, it requires a little education or experience. And those are some things you need to think about.
I mean, Andrew Aiken's in the chat saying you have to have a PhD in business administration to be an effective leader. Also, Andrew Aiken would like to sell you a PhD in business administration. I feel like, Montez, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's great. It's honestly, there's a lot of different ways we can take this. And I love David's answer completely 100%. I was just thinking more from an early career perspective. And certainly, I don't know if we're going to get to this part yet about like influence and the different types of influence that you have out there. You sort of buried the lead with one of them. You're good at that, Rich, with expert influence, and we can certainly talk about French's 6 ways of influence. But if I could say, let's go against my bad advice, and maybe even into trite territory, and it's about leadership early and getting out of your silos and talking to different people within your organization as much as possible. And so back as a young cybersecurity professional there, I was in office, of course, and that was the thing that I actually loved to do was to do walk around and talking with and interacting with the other various departments. And I think that was also an item that really helped me on my journey to becoming leader into leadership was talking to the organization.
So, I was going to say, Rich, Montez, I can't resist asking you. So some people say that of like building the network and all that is so that how you become the jack of all trades, right? And that's really critical in these roles. And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, that part I absolutely agree with. It was back when I was a lot more cocky than I am now, which is, I know, maybe like how can that possibly be? I was say that there's certainly there's always somebody who can do one thing better than me, right? And there's you might find some people who could do like 2 things in information security better than me, but I said there's nobody that can do 3 things better than me. Any 3 in the domain and discipline, there's absolutely nobody that can. So there's maybe some self assurance there, and it absolutely there you have to become potentially look at becoming a a master of a jack master or whatever it is. I don't know. Let's keep Rich. Let's keep this PG.
A cybersecurity bar for all of our nerds out there. I've also heard that idea of one of the struggles you have, and this kind of goes in from the technical mastery into kind of the leadership capability, is you actually don't want as a CISO, you don't want necessarily be the smartest person in the room. It is in fact better to know that you have the smartest people on your staff in the room, to know when to go to them. But that is almost beyond that is not the core competence that you need to have, because like you said, you need to be that jack of all trades, right?
Yeah, and building up on that, sometimes it's like you also need to be a linguist. Or like, what do I mean by that? Right? I think their element is, I think, as we were saying about building the bridge here, right? It was that um, I think Devin here, right, in the chat, because I'm building the bridge. So it's sometimes a CISO or a security leader is like, can you speak the vernacular of the developers? Can you speak the vernacular, of the audit and compliance people? Can you speak the vernacular of the operations people, right? And if you don't understand those languages, those vernaculars, you're not a bridge, right? It's a challenge. And then you're going to seem like you're not technical, you don't know what you're doing, but you need to translate. And that's so very important.
Just by you saying that reminds me, this is an example I used to use maybe a while ago, and maybe starting to show my age a little bit, but I don't know if anybody remembers those those extreme skiing videos. I think the person who put on, I think it was Warren Miller. Does that ring a bell for anyone?
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay, Warren Miller. And so it was always, extremely cool, right? It was well before like drones, right? And so, often you'd wonder like, okay, well, how are they actually getting these crazy shots? And then you have to really then you come to the assumption that, oh, the camera person is about as 90% as good a skier as a person that they're actually filming. And so that's a lot of what, when I would be describing the domain and the discipline. Certainly, you have to be, pretty good, especially as you look to cross the bridge, to continue David's an analogy there, and talking with the developers, because they, and it's from a technical perspective, we can smell the BS, right? And so if somebody doesn't talk the talk and walk the walk. And so it becomes they become a jester or a joker, right? And so if you want to have that experience there, you really do have to prove yourself in those technical circles there.
Is this a chicken and like, so help me figure out the chicken and egg of this, right? Is it I'm able to do this translation, therefore I'm able to be a better leader, and therefore, hey, I'm appealing as a CISO, or I come into a CISO role and then I need to build up that ability to translate to kind of better cross things. Is it I mean, does it ultimately matter as long as you acquire that skill relatively short amount of time? Or
Yeah. How anthropic of you, Rich. There, that is, I think therefore I am, right? And so, you know, there are multiple paths on getting there, and I think as long as you get there, then maybe it doesn't matter. I thought there was really only one path, right? You come up through, the hard trenches there, and you slog it through, and you work your way up, and there's this, the reality of it is that that's not actually the case.
all right, we'll get back to the conversation, but we have got. Oh yes, David. Yes.
I have one thing to this, right? So I could say, I've said before, is I'm using my running analogy, right? Is like you're planning to run a marathon, right? And do you go, I know there's people have seen the movie, right? You go from tomorrow I'm running a marathon, but no, it's you planning you to run a 5K, then you do a 10K, then you do a half marathon, and then you do the marathon, right? You're building all those things up to the point you want to achieve.
All right, well, we have got to run to our first game for today, but get those questions in the queue. I got a couple in there. We'll get back to them right after this, but it is time for some fun.
Do you know what others are thinking? On the public interest.
And if my slide would show up, come on, slide. We can do it. Oh, it's in the backstage. I know the process now. This is how it works. Magic, technology, it's great. This is the public interest. You will know immediately how to play this game. There is no great mystery to it. We have some search queries here, monthly search queries from a very popular market share leading search engine. I don't want to disclose who it is. It rhymes with Oogle. So you got to tell me which has the most monthly search queries, strategy or vision. David, let's get started with you.
I'm going to have to go strategy because people always want to learn something. And so they need to follow a strategy, not just be inspired by a vision.
Montez?
I'm gonna go vision, mostly because I'm a contrarian by nature. And no, it was no. I was going to say it is. I actually did think vision, because I was sort of thinking like the whole like vision caster, and just from a larger population perspective, I think if there's probably more people talking about vision.
All right, make sure you get your votes in the chat as well. Let us know if you are going to go 4 for 4 here, but we're going to have an early leader, vision. Oh yes, I think so. Montez, that's a vote for you there. A lot of people. I'm going to blame Marvel Comics for that. I'm going to blame Marvel Comics. Next up here, most average monthly search queries: board, budget, or risk.
I'm going to jump in on this one, and things like that is I'm going to say board, because everyone in security wants to be on the board of directors.
They think that will solve all their problems. Now, this is general search queries, not cybersecurity specific. So just let you know.
I was going to say, if we're talking about, being, doing what you want to do, and, acting as if, I would have to agree with David. But actually, I think the answer is going to be D, is going to be a budget.
D budget. All right,
Yeah,
so we
from
got board and budget. Let's see who's away. Oh, Montez 2 for 2.
Yeah.
An early lead here. David, you're still not out of this. I believe in you. Let me just see here. I see James got that right in the chat. So did Loris and David as well. So I'm getting some 2 for 2s in here. We have to break some spirits. Let's keep the game moving here. Most average monthly search queries: awareness, culture, innovation, transformation.
Ooh, this is a tough one.
Yeah,
So,
they get harder as they
So
go.
Dutch wants me to go first this time, so I think let's go for it. Man, I'm really sort of waffling on between innovation and transformation. I'm feeling pretty good about innovation.
All right, innovation. David, what do you think here? If you go with innovation, you can't possibly win. I'm just letting you know that.
I know, but I'm still trying to become a CISO here, so I'm learning by example here. So I'm going to go for culture because around the world and companies, we're a lot of diverse cultures, and people want to understand each other.
I like that. Oh, it's an aspirational guess here. I like this. So let's see
talk
what the
me
winner
into
is. Culture,
Oh, man.
David, you're on the board. Montez, you can't go perfect, and that makes me
Okay.
happy. I hope everybody else is. Oh, I think James is doing very good here. Let me know if anybody's 3 for 3. I'm getting very stressed out now. I never want anyone to go perfect here. That's just a little spoiler. And then lastly, authority, influence, lead, or manage. All right, Jared and Dwayne both trying to go 4 for 4 here.
I'm going to say manage because a lot of people, they want to make a change in how to become a manager, how to manage people, and I think that's going to be, they often need help with that.
Okay, manage. Montez, are you on a similar path here, or what do you think?
I do love the answer, but trying to play the game to go 3 for 4, I think I'll have to go in today's times go with influence. Since the root of the influencer there. That's I'm trying to play that route there.
All right. Let's see if we have a winner this round. Lead.
Man.
Oh, here we go. So a successful failure on that one, but that's okay. Montez, you are our winner for today. Anybody go 4 for 4 in the chat? Please let me know. Actually, don't let me know because then I'll be depressed the rest of the show. So we will get back to that. But we've got some questions that have come in. We've got quite a few. Oh, we have people putting their I probably did not make this clear. They're putting their responses for the game into the questions. That's okay. We still like seeing lots of questions. But Stella had a question in here. How many years of experience do you feel an information security professional needs to become a CISO? And I'm assuming we could go with a range here, but either of you have any thoughts on that?
Just enough.
Nice one. Yeah. So I'll just add to that a little bit. Is I think Montez is right, but I'm going to say it all depends on the company. There's a CISO of a 20-person company, of a 200-person company, of a Fortune 500 company, and I think is you're going to see more experience needed for the breadth and scope of the role in the company, and so I think it's going to vary, and that's why some people kind of ladder on going back to the 5K, 10K, half marathon. Is some people will take steps for each of those.
Excellent. Well, make sure we have lots more questions coming in here. Appreciate that. You can also upvote them if you want to. Like Dwayne Grand just submitted here. Why isn't there more love for the deputy CISO role? It seems to me that there is a particular place for someone who is really talented at supporting the main leader and excels in that number 2 role. Yeah, I'm kind of I'm kind of wondering that as well. Any thoughts here, or David?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I got a strong feeling on this one, and so I keep trying to put in for the RSA conference and talk about this. But here's my opinion. So when we go into an airplane, right, there's a pilot and a co-pilot. They're not just a CISO and no CISO, right? There's a pilot and co-pilot, and it's about the pilot has a little more experience, and the co-pilot is building upon that, right? And CISO's the same way. You have someone that has had a little bit more experience, and you're kind of having a second that is there. CISOs take vacation. Pilots go to the bathroom, those type of things. So it's about building that. And I think it's so very important for most companies.
Yeah, I think completely agree. And I think having, a deeper bench and depth chart. And I think the reason why we don't often get that is because we, certainly having a very deep bench and a pretty deep depth chart is just something that we don't just normally get. I also believe that, I've seen a local organization who has a chief operating officer of security that works under the CISO, which I think was incredibly forward thinking and just amazing.
Can I just propose, this is just my most lizard brain take on this, is it calling it a deputy CISO, does that play, like, is it just terminology that we don't give that the recognition it's due? If we called it like co-pilot, doesn't, it's not deputy pilot, right? Is it that silly of a thing, or is this just an outsider not understanding corporate titles as well?
It's the first time I've ever actually thought about it that way, Rich. So
Like, well, because David, to your point, a lot of the experience that you need depends, like, so if you're coming from being a CISO at an SMB or an SME or whatever, and then you're moving into a Fortune 500, and you could obviously, probably the pay and the benefits and everything like that would be really great for that organization, but you're moving from a CISO to a like, I don't know, like, I feel like those are the considerations. I always think of that when we're talking about translation, we're talking about linguistics here. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, I think it's an element. I think is of why is it you don't see the deputy CFO, the deputy, chief marketing officer, deputy, chief revenue officer, those type of things. And I think it's more of a kind of helping because it's still a maturing discipline, right? And that people kind of saying trying to create some lineage and trying to get some recognition for it as it matures over time, right? Is that compared to some of the other disciplines?
Lisa has a really great question here, and I think this is something I wanted to get into. Is, I guess, when do you know that you want to get into maybe more security leadership, or you want to advance in your career here? But what should you be asking yourself? Do you actually want to be a CISO? With considering, we've seen court cases, we've seen regulatory changes that have added more liability to that, and Lisa's kind of wondering here. I'm curious, like, what should be the framework, I guess, for those decisions? Obviously a lot of that comes down to individuals, but any thoughts on that? I'm curious.
well, I think knowing you have to make an early decision on if that's the way that you want to go, and certainly nothing. There's no shame or nothing against saying, you know what, not having that liability is not for me. That is completely fine. I certainly say that you need to go into it eyes wide open, make sure that included on all the DNO and all of that, and making sure that you are actually, as an executive, right, you have a fiduciary responsibility to the organization there, and that's, maybe we'll get to that part later, but that's part of the thinking that you have to have as a chief information security officer is that responsibility. Just, you want to make sure that your compatriots there, everyone else in the organization, also feels the same way about you as a CISO, that you also have that responsibility.
Yeah, I feel
Yeah.
like a lot of that comes down so much to it's also being a good organizational fit, right? Like these, as with any kind of leadership position, any C-suite level position, you want to make sure that everyone's aligned on what all of your expectations are. I mean, have either of you come across that where it's just not the right fit in terms of where they see their CISO operating? I know we get caught up in reporting structure a lot when we have these kind of conversations, but
Oh, you
outside of
said it.
just in terms of organizational fit.
Mm.
Well, I think is coming back to my point previously. Each and every company is a different maturity stage, is different expectations, different needs, and it's really trying to find a mutual match. Is this where you're at, in your experience and goals, and right, and where's the company at? And sometimes it may not be a great match.
Yeah. Could I maybe add on, especially from what you were saying earlier, Rich? It was, I think maybe a lot of it has to do with what is the impetus for the organization to have a CISO, right? And there is you know the grandiose way is like, okay, the board has identified this critical need, not necessarily, and there are a lot of good people who have taken up the CISO banner, certainly you know, as a result of like the NYDFS, saying, okay, if you operate here, then this organization needs to have a CISO. Well, if it's a regulatory need, and not one that's been naturally formed by, that's come that not come from like the board, does it really have, carry the same weight? I don't know. I think that could be a potential where that you could have the CISO, the C in CISO be a little c, which is something that we're always fighting.
Well, so that kind of gets into the topic of red flags, right? When you're looking for that alignment, is there any other, coming from that? Oh yeah, we're doing this because we have to check the box. Is there any other thing top of mind where you would like, the first thing you're checking when you're looking at a CISO role, something like that, that might be a red flag or green flag, something that says, hey, this is a good piece of business right here.
Well, I think it's always just looking at, understand the roles and responsibilities, right? In various companies that the CISO may have certain responsibilities. In other cases, the CEO may have that responsibility, or the chief legal officer may have that responsibility. And then I think as matching that is important. And I think this is one of the things that like the CISO, professional society is kind of forming here. They're saying, hey, do you need to have liability protection? What is your expectations and kind of governance and things like that? And looking at that and being very thoughtful of that. And sometimes you say being at a startup, for example, a CISO at a startup, totally valid, but maybe a completely different set of roles and responsibilities. And again, coming back to the mutual match.
I'd like to say, you say like a question that you could ask, and a really great question. I don't remember the source. I'm not the author. And it was something like, it was, what could make me coming on as the CISO fail no matter what I do? So what could happen here? And I just fail, and there's just nothing I could have done about it. So I think that's a good one to, some way of, if you're looking to take up on that role, that certainly is something that you should, ask outright, or at least answer amongst yourself there.
Anthony in the chat had a question here. This is maybe a little tangential, but I'll throw this out here in terms of kind of getting to the CISO role in terms of career progression. Any opinions on the VCISO role? Right. This is the opposite to me for the deputy CISO role. I see so many people that are suddenly VCISOs. I'm curious, like, is that where can we pull value out of that for ultimately building a career to a CISO level role? I'm curious.
Oh, yeah, definitely have to jump in this one. I think there's a couple of cases here. Certainly some smaller companies and things like that saying, hey, can they afford or do they need a full-time CISO? Maybe not, right? Maybe it's a partial. And so sometimes having the VCISO is very, very important. There's other things is that sometimes, especially in the startups and other things, is that you say more experienced CISOs, like, hey, they're, I don't want to say retiring, right? But kind of going the stage. It's like, hey, they can help, maybe startups and smaller companies, in a virtual part-time basis. And again, a great, opportunity to do that. Now, I think your question, Rich, is that really a path? Do I become a VCISO to become a CISO? I think it's a very interesting question, because I mostly see it for the people that are doing it based on experience and not trying to follow the path to becoming a full CISO.
Okay.
Well, somewhat in jest, well, again, as I become a broken record, completely agree with David. But, and they say, right, everything before the but doesn't count, right? So, but, we're asking the question because, we are in cybersecurity. We can be terrible people to our own, right? So, the reality of it is that anyone who's getting experience and is on the path, we should be holding up and supporting. But, there are certain titles, like VCISO, not so much VCISO, but really what's been left unsaid, like field CISO, maybe like on the sales roles, they just carry a terrible stigma with them, and they really shouldn't, because we're all pulling the rope the same way. And that's just a little bit of our own, I don't know, stuffiness, or just the way that we are trying to hold rigidly to cybersecurity being this one particular thing that it probably actually isn't. So
yeah, so Montez, I'm taking this as like the element is yes, we can say we like the Lions, but we're not standing behind it. So I got the message loud and clear today. So
oh man, no.
Just as long as you're not the Joey Harrington of CISOs, I think you'll be okay there. I kind of want to get back to this idea of influence and kind of like transitioning into building up. I hate to call them soft skills because that sounds so dismissive of them, but how do you? I guess when you're coming at it from with the technical background, you're starting to build these relationships. You're starting to build that network. I mean, how do you? Are there any kind of unwritten rules, I guess, when you're talking about trying to exert influence or best practices or something like that? Like, how do you start to think strategically like that, where like this is just as important as technical controls is my ability to communicate with with other leaders in the business?
So I'm sure. Oh, go ahead. Did you want to go first, or?
Oh, sure. I'll go.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'll come back to the things of the things. It's like you need to have communication skills. You need to have the art of influence. You need to have the presentation skills, right? You need to have the understanding. Sometimes some people, hey, getting an MBA helps them with that and building that skills, that experience, that practice, right? But the reality is you must have those. You can't, because say you're going to go present to the board and you really don't know how to communicate an executive or business level or that vernacular. Very, very difficult to do. But this is not just security, right? This is, I think, all disciplines, is that people are going to lead companies and things like that. You need to build those soft skills. There's many ways of doing it, but it's sometimes whether you're joining, going to a Dale Carnegie course or you're joining the, the speakers, groups, you have to build that. And it does take some time.
Completely agree. And I think this could be a topic dedicated to its own show. Hint, Rich, just pick up the hint there. And so,
yes.
and so we can, there is, when we talk about influence, here's where I think we make a mistake as cybersecurity people. And because in and of itself, I like to think, maybe naively, that cybersecurity is maybe more meritorious as far meritocracy as when it comes to maybe other domains. And so, if the person who knows more and achieves more typically moves up. Don't kill me on that. Okay. now I will say, and so we get into the trap, and certainly as I am been there and maybe still working in there. It's like, if I can just explain myself logically, everyone will get it and everything will move on. And so that ends up getting into the category of like expert influence. What that does is that pigeonholes you to being to only being consulted when the people who aren't information security professionals understand that you have expertise in this particular thing, right? And so now, if you are waiting for a non-security practitioner to bring you in when there is potentially something that you can help with, you're going to be waiting for a very long time. And so you need to brush up and get really good with the other types of influence, especially the most important, which is referent influence. And so you got to get out and you have to talk to people and you have to build up those relationships and do the networking and do the things that we think is you shouldn't have to do, because when I'm right, everybody should just know that I'm right, and you should just see that I'm right and just do what I say because I'm right. That just doesn't work.
We had a question from Dwayne Gran, kind of talking about influence. What is the signal that it's happening? I think I'm creating influence and I have reasons to support this, but is there some mirror we can hold up and really say for actually creating tangible influence? Like where is what is the success criteria? I guess this is like a very technical, I feel like, way to do this. Like what's the pass fail on influence here?
When you talking with people and you're building influence, you should be looking to be a giver, and it should be, what can I do for you? If you are, we all, right, the technical person, right, even as much as like, okay, you're the IT guy for your family, right, and you don't hear from cousin June or Uncle Maud or Aunt Maud, I guess, until the computer is broken. And how does that make you feel, right? And it's just like, you're used as a tool. And so that your influence is working when you are not keeping score anymore, and you are looking to give to everyone that you are running into, because it will come back to you.
I'd love to build on Montaz's, kind of recommendation here. Is when I left the military and joined Microsoft, right? My manager taught me, here's all the best practices, growing your career, and he said, said, David, the most valuable people are those who make other people successful, right? And that's what it's all about, right? And so I think, Rich, going back to your question, is saying, well, how do you know that, or the, I don't know who asked that one is, well, how do you know you've reached it, right? Or you're being successful? Said, well, the question you should ask is like, are you being invited to meetings? Are you being invited for your opinion? Are you being invited as a speaker? Are you being invited to a podcast? If you're getting the demand, then you're become an influencer and you're in demand. If you're not getting invited to meetings, then I think you need to worry.
All right. One thing we need to worry about right now is getting to our last game.
Hello, welcome to the Department of Yes, where no request is ever rejected.
Yes, this is the Department of Yes. This is where you have submitted your horrible, horrible bad ideas. Thank you to everybody that was submitting some bad ideas. And I'm gonna come to you, folks. I'm gonna ask you to make the good faith, non-snarky case for why this is actually a good idea. I'm going to start here with Andrew Akins. He dropped this one, I think, pretty early in the show here. And his bad idea: fast track your rise by secretly editing the org chart. Swap your name with the CISOs, print it on official letterhead, announce surprise succession at the next all hands. If nobody notices for a week, congratulations. Why do you want to do this? I'm going to go with you, David. Why do you want to do this?
Oh, I apologize. I was looking at the chat window. So can you repeat that one again for me?
Sure.
Sorry.
Essentially, to fast track your rise, secretly edit the org chart, swap your name on the CISO with the CISOs, print it on official letterhead, announce surprise succession at the next all hands. If nobody notices by the end of the week, congratulations, you've got it. Maybe a little George Costanza action here.
Yeah. This is a great idea, right? Because if you just like on LinkedIn, you put the best titles and changes right there, and that's how you get the next job.
Okay, so it's kind of Montez, kind of your idea of putting this out into the universe. Any other good takes, good ideas that can stem from this, Montez?
Well, I was just thinking about internal penetration test there, right? For anti-corporate espionage there. That would be that's where my mind initially went, but I sort of like David's answer a little bit better.
I don't know, Montez. I like yours. It's like it's a plus, right? It's either, hey, I just I just gaslit the entire organization successfully, and that should be probably like a giant organizational red flag, or I just got a nice raise. Either way, if you have a high enough estimation of yourself, I guess it would be a good idea. And we have one more from Lisa Ackerman. Do not include any evidence on your resume that you even know how to spell security, let alone know what the role of the CISO responsibilities are. Then apply for every CISO role that comes open. Someone's bound to bite. Montez, why do you want to do this?
Well, do you? I will assume in this particular case that Lisa does actually know security. And so then there are other intangible aspects as a leader that are on the resume that you're talking. And so you're actually talking about, being a great leader, and to mention that because, we all know that, your information security or your cybersecurity there. So it is highlighting the other aspects of leadership that are very important to who's going to hire you, who is not going to be a security practitioner. I don't know. Maybe that works.
I love that. Yeah. Put the emphasis on the leadership, not necessarily on the security knowledge. David, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, first one, it certainly is that you don't put everything on there because everything. You're responsible for everything. So if you put a small things, that's going to make your scope is too narrow, right, and not be a good match for the company, right? The other element is security is sometimes sensitive, right? So you don't want to reveal anything that's sensitive there of all the bad things that have happened in the past. Like you know how to keep things confidential.
And Laura had a great suggestion. At least test the reading skills of HR departments. They scan everything first. Come on. We all know that. Thank you so much, everybody, for your bad ideas. It's always a delight. I saw a smiley or a laughy face go by. You can react with emojis if you want. I may be upset by them. I think I had something in my eye. No, stop. I think I have something in my eye. Please don't. No, it's too much. Anyway. This is a problem when you wear contact lenses. You're not sure if you're seeing emoticons or just little weird floaties in your eyes. Before we got about 15 minutes of show proper here. I guess, kind of what it takes to become a CISO, just reflecting back on that. David, or I'll go with you, Montez. Is there any thing that you think is either underappreciated or we don't talk enough about when it comes to kind of moving up your career into that role? So often the conversation like we've been having is about transitioning from technical skills to more leadership, soft skill kind of things. Is there anything underappreciated or under talked about that you think needs more attention here?
Well, we did draw attention to the fact that you have to, speak it out loud, right? And I think that's, pretty important. There is, and I don't necessarily know that it's in our, domain or how really pervasive it is, but there is the concept of like, working to rule, right? And which is, doing just enough. And if you're looking to move up, the reality of it is that you doing just enough ain't enough. And so you need to be constantly showing that you are trying to do sort of do the things that are at the next level, and that you have a progression and doing the extra stuff. Yeah, I mean, how many people who do just enough, that aren't that don't have the same last name as the person who owns the joint, gets to move up. So
David, what about you? Any kind of underappreciated or underspoken about aspects to this?
I think one of the big things that many people kind of forget about is we all have growth areas. We all have development. Doesn't matter who you are, we all do. But I think sometimes the thing is the people that don't ask for help, right? Is sometimes you have to say, ask for help. And the people that, if you ask for help, it's amazing how many people are there to help. But you have to be, kind of self-critical and saying like, okay, I got some gaps. I need some help. How can I solve those? How can I get some assistance for that? How can I get some mentoring for that? And really, if you're trying to move up and you don't have a mentor that's really giving you the honest, critical feedback and some guidance, right? You're not going to move up.
that's a great answer. Now I'm upset that I didn't say that.
What about Andrew Aiken? Sacrifice a goat. Does that is ritual sacrifice an underappreciated aspect of this aspect?
I think that's only in the new movie 28 years later. So I could be wrong.
Okay.
If it doesn't hurt, it's got to help, right?
But David, you brought up mentorship, and I think like in terms of networking, is that a great way? Like I'm curious, at what point should you always be looking for mentors kind of throughout your career? Is that something is that part of your networking? Is that kind of the start of your networking journey for you? Or I'm curious, like where in the career journey does mentorship kind of fall in?
Oh, two parts of that. One is that it's mandatory throughout your career until you're going to end your career, but let's put that aside, right? It's getting mentors, but it's based on your needs at that time. It's not about, hey, how can I get the most senior mentor and sponsor and their magic's going to happen? Is though understanding what your needs are, because that will evolve over time and you'll have different mentors for each of thing. Soft skills mentors are different than business mentors versus technical mentors. And so evolving that and going after over time. And the other element is sometimes being a mentee or a mentor yourself, right? Is sometimes mentoring others is how you grow enormously yourself.
Hard agree. That is absolutely. And I would say even maybe a really good question, not to put words into your mouth there, Rich. Really good question would be, where do you find them? But I will say, I'm not going to answer the question. I just said it was a good question. And so I myself, I've got a mentor or two currently, and they are not in information security. It was, really is, business mentors. And it's incredibly important. I've been very fortunate to have been asked to be mentors to, several, let's be, quite a few people, lots, and
You're in demand.
yeah, in demand, and it's always an incredible honor, and is something that you have to know what it is that you're trying to do. It's to David's point, and like, look, what are you trying to get out of it? It should definitely have a pre-established end time with certain goals, because otherwise you just kind of end up chopping the water, and sometimes that's okay, but really just to understand that this is one of those cases where you are really asking of someone. You're not necessarily giving, although it does end up in a relationship. Hopefully, both parties do end up learning a little something. But the mentee is the recipient of the knowledge by the vast summation, the vast majority of it. So, but yeah, Rich, where do you find them? Where do you find them, Rich?
Yeah, well, this is I just was struck by this really brilliant question. Where do you find these mentors, especially, Montez, to your point,
Yeah.
when it's not in your field necessarily, right? Where you're trying to build up that translation layer, right? Maybe you want to talk to somebody that's more on the development side, or you want to talk to someone that's more on the financial side to understand that whole world. That's becoming increasingly critical for CISOs and stuff like that. Like, what do? You just in mail on LinkedIn until someone says yes?
Well, there's
That's
many
actually
different
true.
techniques on that, but
Yeah.
I think there's many different techniques. But also, I think it's coming is what's the value proposition to the mentor themselves? Why would they want to mentor you? Because mentors learn a lot from their mentees as well. I think, as Dutch said, that sometimes you can learn on various things yourself, or from more people who are younger. But then, what's the value proposition? What are they going to get from it? Right? Is it in their interest? Right? Are you a rising star that they want to have a connection with, a network in itself? So make it quid pro pro. What value can provide to them by taking on that role?
Yeah, certainly agree. I think so. Rich, you mentioned about the end mail, and certainly I have had a coach who has mentioned that as an opportunity there, as something that possibility. Of course, you're going to get 99, maybe 100 of 100 times you're going to but you always has that asterisk, right? But then maybe something that's a little bit more certain is that there are organizations that specialize in matching up mentees with mentors. One that I was certainly a part of is Cyversity. There, I've met some absolutely wonderful mentees through that organization. There is another one here that's local to St. Louis. There, we want Cyber Up there, which is does a lot of good stuff with mentees and mentor, doing like mentorship, elements there as well. So there's places out there that can help, get you matched up depending on which side of the coin you're on. So.
All right, we've got enough time for a few more questions that people have submitted here, just to kind of make sure we're getting all the answers here. Got to remind you two things real quick here. First up, make sure you are registered for our Super Cyber Friday next week, hacking the internal politics of cybersecurity. Just pop that up on your screen there. So I won't leave that on there too long because it's very aggressive. I will fully admit that, but I want you to know about it. I want you to find it. You can also find our events page at CISOseries.com, and stick around. We're going to have some breakout rooms. We're not going over to Discord. We're not going anywhere else. We're going to stay right here in the glorious AirMeet studios, virtual studios here. We're going to have some fun here. Do a little 5-on-5 kind of random put together into rooms here. So you may be talking to David Cross. You may be talking to Montez Fitzpatrick. You may be talking to one Rich Straffolino. In that case, I do have some sympathy for you, but them's is the breaks. Before that, though, got time for a few more questions. Like I said here, Anthony in the chat here a little while ago had a question here. As the CISO position matures, what are the methods CISOs can use to stay on top of new and changing legal and compliance requirements? We talked about needing to stay on top of new tech and stuff like that. This seems like it's constantly changing. I'm just going to throw out there, listen to cybersecurity headlines. Maybe I have a vested interest in that, but any better advice than that, Montez?
Well, one, that's pretty good advice. That is, being, the chief information security officer should be very integrally, embedded within the compliance function. In the way that structure my program, that is sort of part of the compliance function. Is that we won't get into the specifics of it because it's boring, but certainly certain crosswalks of things that we need to pay attention to, and then we have what would be the young bright-eyed bushy-tailed legal externs that are coming in. A lot of times some of their job is to then review all the different regulatory compliance things that have that preside over us, just to make sure that there are no major changes.
David, about on your end?
Yeah, certainly. I'm a big fan of podcasts, of things like that, because I think part of it is podcasts, blogs, and some other types of things is to kind of getting flagged like, oh, something's coming up. I'm not aware of that. I need to go investigate. So it's kind of getting the alert. And so some of these podcasts are great at that. Another thing is, honestly, is one example is like I still take a lot of stuff on Coursera, and sometimes things are coming up. Let's say people like there's a Coursera and Udemy and others as well, but like saying, oh, there's a new thing coming on with NIST or things like that. Well, maybe I should take a course on it to get refreshed and up to date on that. You need to continually invest in yourself. If you're not training, that means you're declining. That's my mantra.
Ooh, wow. That's I like that idea. Yeah, you gotta keep improving. Otherwise, you're falling behind here. We had two similar questions, kind of going back to contract negotiations and kind of when you're on the precipice of getting that role here. I'm gonna share James Sparrenberger's one, but I think these are both relevant. What are some things like liability protection you should be sure to negotiate into a contract? And then Tim O'Brien asked, how do you approach the company with the job offer to be included on their D&O without the risk of them pulling the offer? So kind of the navigation of that phase. I say these for last. These are like kind of the advanced questions here, but any thoughts on kind of that contract negotiation phase?
I'll throw one quick thought. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't know many CISOs or companies, certainly in the United States, that have contracts. Outside the United States, it's very different, but how many people have a contract, right? It's most employees, most states and things like that in the United States are at will employment. Now, going back to the specific element is ultimately you have to look at is when you come into the company, what's the roles and responsibilities and expectations? And then you have to say, yes, I can take that on, or no, I'm not going to do that. But I really haven't seen many companies that will agree to that in an employment offer up front. So there's some risk with that, but Montaz, I've seen, if you've seen other experiences in this area.
No, that's really that's sort of the part, the ugly truth of what we're fighting for in this. And that's what we've been, talking about, here and there, kind of weaving our way through it, is that, the information security and the CISO as as an executive role is still actually maturing and trying to figure out, where it actually is there, for that question, like for like the chief executive officer, having, being covered in, in the insurance policy, that's going to be a given. And it's just not a given yet for us. And it's something to be, negotiated. And because, really we should have a financial responsibility to the organization, and we are liable for the things that we do, and so we should be covered there. So unfortunately, I think that was a non-answer, but it is the reality.
Yeah, I mean, we can't be too prescriptive here, but some definitely some things to think about. Speaking of keeping up with compliance and legal change and stuff like that, just shout out to Greg in the chat for sharing about San Diego. Or one of the things I enjoy about San Diego, he says, is USD's Cyber Law Risk Symposium. And I'm sure they're not the only ones that are doing similar like that. So maybe look just for local academic, for wanting to go into the deep dive. Maybe you hear about something on cybersecurity headlines or your podcast of choice, or just from the office chat, and that can maybe give you a deeper dive in that. We are just about approaching the top of the hour, so we're going to get started with our breakout rooms in just a second. But I want to take just a second. Thank you so much, David Cross, Montez Fitzpatrick, for your expertise, for kind of showing us the way, right, that we can I think understand, right, what the CISO role one is all about, and kind of building your own bridge to that, whether through technical, through networking, through mentorship. I really like that idea. I had never heard. I'm still kind of wrapping my head around mentorship, and I probably shouldn't be as a 40-year-old. But the idea of coming at it with, this is for a fixed amount of time. I want something in and out of it. I think, like being very transparent about that, right? Not making it this kind of fluffy professorial. I always think of it maybe more in a professorial sense, in that kind of way. So I think that's extremely helpful for a lot of people.
So Rich, do you have a mentor? If not, maybe we should have a whole series or another podcast about, mentors.
Listen, I am totally on board with that. So David, I will, unless Montez, you want to make a competing offer for a potential mentorship podcast. I'm just kidding.
I'm still on this expertise thing. I didn't know, so it was so as grandiose as sharing expertise.
I
just came because I look good.
That's number one with the bullet on my core shopping list. Expertise, one, have to know how to spell it consistently, and two, that's definitely what I'm looking for. The other thing I'm looking for is for you to join us in the breakout rooms. We would love to have you there. Join up with us. We are going to get that started now. I'm going to formally I'm going to bang the gavel here, and we are going to open up the breakout room. So please, we'll see everybody there in just a second. And thank you so much for watching the return of Super Cyber Friday. We hope you join us next week as well. Events page at CISOseries.com.